rather than pointing up there, so it's slightly less lively than it might be.
So where do we find the recording?
It'll be in WebLearn.
Okay.
I'll show you in the seminars where to find it exactly. All right, well, welcome to Project Management. And you've chosen this module. It's a free module for you to pick, 15 credits. And I'm glad that you've chosen it, and I hope that you'll find it worthwhile and profitable over your future career. My name is Martin Topple, and my office is MT2M03, which is at the far end of the building, and that's my email address, and I picked up that photo from somewhere. Don't think it looks like me anymore though, does it? So I did try with a self-cutting haircut to look a bit younger, but it didn't work. Not fooling anybody, am I? And what we've got for this module is 2 bits of assessment. First of all, in week 14, you're due to submit your coursework, but as you spotted, the lecture is on a Friday, so that actually means you end up submitting the coursework the following Monday, which will be week 15. And that counts for half of your assessment, and that demonstrates your ability to run a real project. So when you leave here, you could actually run a live job from beginning to end. So that assessment will demonstrate that skill in you, and it's based on a case study on the computer, and you demonstrate the ability to roll that through its life cycle. And the second assessment, which is scheduled by assessment, so I can't tell you the date of it yet, it depends how they fit it in with all the other modules that everybody is taking, but that second assessment will be round about week 14, 15 again, and that counts for half of your assessment, and that is about the theory of project management. So the practice is that top half, and the theory is that bottom half.
So still about the second assessment will still be about the end of May?
Yes, they'll both be about the same time. This semester just gone, they were about a week apart. Later we'll tell you the exact dates when we know them, but certainly that 28th of May 2018 up there, that's a given. That's when you'll be submitting your coursework online through Turnitin. And we have the lecture in here, you're here, you know about it, and we've got 2 seminar rooms arranged so far. We've got a spare lined up that we haven't managed to need yet, but the seminars are MG413 and MG415 at 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock respectively. We had one this morning, and in it we learnt how to use the software. And this afternoon we'll do the same thing. We'll learn how to use the software. And if you missed the morning one, you could come along to the afternoon one today, but try and stick to the seminars you've been allocated to in general.
On my timetable, it says the first one to apply.
Fine, come to that. You don't go to both, you go to one or the other. And you'll be scheduled on your personal timetable to attend one or the other of those 2 sessions. But in any given week, if you miss one, you could pop into the other. But be careful, because the one in the morning before the lecture will be discussing what was done in the lecture on the previous Friday, but the one in the afternoon will be discussing on what's done in the lecture on the same day. So be careful about, if you miss one, which one you then come to join in on. Does that make sense? A bit? A bit. Okay. That's good enough. On WebLearn, we have a module booklet. Then there it's got a weekly outline of what we'll be doing in each week. But basically, we're going to spend 4 weeks giving you your basic skills as a project manager, things all project managers have to know. And then we're going to spend about 4 weeks doing the management of your projects on top of those basic skills. And then 3 weeks talking about the people aspects of managing projects. Leadership, motivation, teamwork, and so on. And also, on that book list and on this PowerPoint slideshow, we've got a link for you where you can download the trial version of Microsoft Project for nothing. But don't do it yet, because it would expire before your coursework was due in. So be careful about exactly when you download it.
I just saw on one of the TVs upstairs in the lounge that you can get Office 365 free. Is that part? Is this part of the Office?
It isn't.
It isn't.
No. Oddly enough, it isn't.
Yeah.
That's actually quite an interesting argument. Why isn't Microsoft Project part of Microsoft Office? After all, it could be. They give away a spreadsheet, PowerPoint, and all the other bits and pieces. So why don't they give away Project? And the answer is because they don't have to. People will buy it happily. They will pay more to get it. And it's about £400 to buy Microsoft Project. And of course, not everybody needs Project. That's the other argument. But I think the basic idea is they don't have to give it away. They can sell it. Right, average salaries for project managers. Let's just go there. It's gone down slightly after Brexit, but there you go. Average salary for a project manager, 57,500, which isn't bad. It's more than I get at the moment.
Entry level.
That's average.
Entry level.
And average for a project manager. There are project assistants, there are project directors, there are all sorts of other titles as well, but for a project manager, you're talking about 60,000 in London. It used to be exactly 60,000, but since the Brexit vote, it's gone down slightly as fewer projects are underway, and there's a slight clawback on where things are going, while everybody waits to see what's going to happen as a result of the Brexit vote. So that's of interest to you, I guess, and you might want to think about that. But of course, you don't have to be an actual project manager. It could be just that you're a manager, and as part of your job, you manage projects, because change is achieved through projects, and as a manager, you're about change, and you will be leading change through projects. Or you'll be on a project board or a program board, and you'll need to understand what project managers can do so that you can get the best out of them and know that they're performing properly. So at any level, you could have this knowledge being useful as a project manager, as a manager, on a program or a project board. All of those are valuable things to know. There is also a whole set of professional bodies, obviously. Project management is a profession and you can become professionally qualified. And we offer you free online training in these various bodies at the moment, and when I give you the details of that, I suggest you sign up. We don't pay for your exams. If you wanted to take the exams, that's a couple of £100. You'd have to pay for that yourself, but we're offering the training online through a company so you can have a go at that. And you don't have to take the exams because all of them offer you a trial exam and then they give you a score for your trial exam. And if you take a snapshot of that, you can show it to people when you get interviewed. So I took the APM foundation exam and I got 80% on my test mock exam. Now will you pay for me to take it when you give me the job? Which they will, of course, if you're showing them that sort of information. So basically in the UK it's the Association of Project Management. In the United States it's the Project Management Institute. In Australasia it's the Australian Institute of Project Management, and all three of them come under the International Project Management Association. So the International Project Management Association will govern, if you like, those three bodies. And our module is based around the APM approach in the UK. So that's the one you'd probably be most interested in taking. Any questions so far? That's unusual. No questions? Anybody want to leave now? 68 grand not enough, whatever it is?
What's this comparable to in terms of how hard it is? Is it comparable to, say, SPSS in terms of learning it?
Probably similar. If you're logical, you'll be okay. If you talk to me during the seminars and if you come every week, you'll be okay. Each time we do stuff, as you'll see quite soon, there are exercises and case studies that you work on, and I go around and I check that you're okay. And you can also submit a draft coursework before the actual coursework, and I'll make comments on it, which can be very useful, and I suggest you take advantage of that. So, for those students that come, listen, think, and engage, they'll get first-class honours. For the students that don't come, don't think, don't engage, they'll fail. So 2 different questions for 2 different sets of people. But you're here, so hopefully all you guys are going to get A's on this, 70 plus. All right, let's make a start then. Just before I do that, I want to make sure this thing is actually running. I did remember to start it, didn't I? Yes, I did. Good. So we are actually recording the lecture. So what is project management? Now actually, I think most of you know what project management is, otherwise you wouldn't have chosen the module. But it's usually a one-off set of interrelated activities to achieve some end goal. You don't need to write all this down. This PowerPoint slideshow is on WebLearn, all of it. And the word notes that accompany it are on WebLearn. But you're welcome to make notes or draw or scribble if you like to. And a project consists of a non-routine set of tasks. It's non-routine because a project is something new. It's not the same thing you do every week in the same way. That's your job. A project is something new, some change that's being achieved. A new station, recruiting staff, an event. It can be anything, but a project is a one-off thing with a goal to be reached. And you break it down into a set of non-routine tasks. And it's difficult to be a project manager because you've got all these constraints. There won't be enough time. There won't be enough money. There won't be enough resources. There'll be legal difficulties. You can't make people work 24 hours a day. You have to have proper contracts. There'll be ethical issues in some projects, environmental concerns on others. You're building a nuclear power station. There are ethical and environmental concerns with that. And there will be things about quality. Are you running the project to the correct standards and so on? And worse than that, or better than that, depending on your viewpoint, you've also got people in your projects, and you need to make those people do things for you. But often, you're not the manager of those people. If you think of how a project fits in an organisation, the project is done by the people in the organisation who have managers in the organisation. They're allocated to your project, and you're called the project manager, but you're not really their manager. So what do? How do you tell them off when they don't do what they're supposed to? How do you motivate them when you're not actually a line manager for them? So it can be a little tricky to deal with people. You ask them to do something in 4 weeks. A week later, they don't seem to be doing anything. What are you going to do? I'm not saying I've got the answer to that, but people in projects is quite important as well. And how you motivate and how you lead and how you run things is going to be vital. And the basic process, you can sort of break it down like this. We define and plan what's got to be done, who's got to do it, and what resources will it need. We then need to schedule it to find out when those various different things will happen. And finally, having got a plan, which hopefully we get before the project starts, the project then begins and it starts to go wrong. So how do we then control it? How do we get it back on track if we can? So that's the project life cycle, if you like. And the life cycle, there's two schools of thought on project management at the moment, if you like, philosophical approaches. There's Prince 2 and there's APM Bok. Prince 2, projects in controlled environments, came from large governments in the UK. In fact, they invented that, and it's a method of project management which is very trendy at the moment, but it's based on the idea that everything is controlled by routines and sort of process driven. It doesn't talk much about people and their impact on your project. It's quite successful, and there's a lot of Prince 2 qualified people around.
Yeah, I've seen jobs advertised for Prince 2 qualified people.
That's right.
But do they all use Microsoft Works? Sorry, what's the Microsoft?
It doesn't matter which software you use.
Okay. So
They're all the same. It's like which word processor do you use. It doesn't matter. It's what's behind it that's important. And the APM Bok, the Association of Project Management body of knowledge or book of knowledge, depending on who you listen to, is the other philosophical approach. And the basic difference is Prince could fit inside APM Bok, and also on top of Prince you've got all the thing about people. And that's why I think I prefer to base this module on APM rather than on Prince, because it is broader and it thinks more about people. And that's my view of project management, and I hope that's one that you will back up when you get to know more about it as well. But by all means, study for Prince. It's successful. You'll get the money. You'll be a project manager. And it doesn't matter whether you're Prince or APM Bok. They talk to each other quite happily. They're all project managers. They're all professionally qualified. And the life cycle for both of them: define the project, create and refine the plan, track the project and update the plan accordingly, and close the project. So the life cycle, it's born, it evolves, the work is done, it dies away because it's done. The goal is reached. So that's the life cycle of project management. And we're going to discuss each one of those stages briefly below so we get the idea of where we're going with project management. Now I'm going to choose a remarkably easy project, and I've chosen it because everybody in the room knows what a house is. So I haven't done it about events management, I haven't done it about aviation, I haven't done it about accounting and finance. I've chosen a simple project which happens to be building a house. That's it. Have I defined my project? Is that the end of the definition? You know what you've got to do now? What's missing?
You need the steps. You need to break it down.
No, that's the next step.
Foundation.
No, that's when you're going too far already.
You need the
Time?
specific time, yeah? Where?
Yeah.
Specify. Yeah, what house? How many bedrooms? All those sorts of things. Does it include a garage? Are we got to do the landscaping? Have we got to do the interior decorating? Everything like that has to be worked out to start with. So to define your project, work out what is included and what isn't included in that project. And that's called the scope of your project. So one of the first things you do is get the scope right. So you need to know how many bedrooms, is there a garage, are we doing landscaping, what type of brick, and so on and so on and so on. And that gives you your scope, and your scope will determine the budget and the likely time of the length of the project and so on. You'll have a rough idea now what you've got to do next. And of course what you've got to do next is create and refine the plan. Now you know what type of house you've got to build, you can work out the tasks that have to be done to build it. You break it down into tasks. And somebody mentioned foundations. That's an example of a mega task, if you like, because foundations isn't just one thing, is it? What have you got to do when you build foundations in a house? Anybody know? Lots of digging holes. What are you digging holes for?
Weight of the house?
The weight of the house, yeah. So you build a thing, put concrete on it, put the bricks on top of that. What else? The services, the water, the electrics, the gas have got to come in. So you need trenches and things for that to fit in.
To make sure that the house doesn't topple over. So
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about with the big bits of concrete that you build the walls on. Yeah. Not the roof yet. You need the wheels first. You need the walls before you do the roof, don't you? But we're getting the idea. So that we can break it down into tasks. And tasks are things that we can understand, relate to, work out what resources they need, and how much money they'll cost to do, and how long they'll take. So we break it down into tasks. Now, tasks, there could be quite a lot of tasks in your project. We'll have an example later talking about a nuclear power station that we might want to build. Not a house, but a nuclear power station. And we'll think about how many tasks might be in a project like that. Well, we'll leave that till later. But in any case, you're going to need expert advice when you're breaking this down into tasks, because you might not know everything about the project yourself. I'll give you an example. Suppose you're building a nuclear particle accelerator. Do you know what that is? That big ring, 30 kilometers in diameter in Switzerland, called the CERN thing. And what it does is it takes light, it goes round and it smashes into itself and generates little particles. Physics. It's a big physics toy for physicists. Suppose you're the project manager building that. How much physics do you know? Yeah? Okay. So you find a physicist and you start asking them about physics. Yeah? And now you find a builder. How much physics do they know?
Not that much.
Okay. So you've got your scientist here. How much building do they know? Okay. And you've got your physicists here who don't know building, your builders here who don't know physics, you've got you in the middle who don't know much about either, So somehow, your job as project manager is to get all those people together and come up with a feasible, viable plan. And as you can imagine, that's not terribly easy. It's made even more difficult by the fact that can you trust builders when you ask them the cost of things and how long they take?
Nope.
Okay, you've all had some experience of that by the sound of it. I'll say no more about that at this stage, but yes, even talking to the experts is not necessarily going to give you the answers you want. And thirdly, once you've worked out what those thousands of tasks are, you have to think about how they all link together. So we can't put the roof on until we've built the walls, and so on. So there's lots of things there that we're going to need help with to work out the way they relate to each other. And fourthly, which resources do each of those tasks need, and what raw materials do you need to do it? So if you're building a wall, how many bricks does it need? How much cement do you need? You've got to have the cement mixer, and you've got to have people to build the wall, and various bits like shovels and water and so on. And if you've got things arriving on site, when should they arrive on site? And how much money will you need? And is the finance in place in the right positions through the life of your project, which follows on from the cash flow that you generate in your plan? So that's quite a complicated thing to do. And you will make some assumptions at that point. And I've listed some here. You'll make some assumptions about the supply of labour, about the costs of labour, and about prices and delivery times. Now, when I say that, we make assumptions about costs. The assumption we usually make is the costs will stay the same for the life of the project. That's reasonable. But suppose it's a 7-year-long project or a 30-year-long project. Is it true that prices are going to stay the same and wages are going to stay the same? So why do you make the assumption that they do?
That's all you can do.
Yeah, what else can you do? All right, prices are going to go up or down, but we don't know by how much or by when. So what we do is we assume for the moment they'll stay the same through the life of the project.
Can't you add like a 10% buffer?
You can add a contingency, but the more contingencies you add in, the more expensive your project becomes, and if it's a bidding process, you might not get the job. So yeah, you can add in contingencies. You can be careful, you can put in buffers, but don't get the job that way. That's assumptions that you have to make. And that will give you the idea of effort-driven scheduling. Now, it's a fairly simple idea. That slide is about effort-driven scheduling. What that means, EDS, effort-driven scheduling, if one person can dig a hole in 4 days, what can 2 people do? 1 person 4 days, 2 people?
2 days. 2 days.
More or less. Yeah, 4 people?
1 day.
8 people?
Half a day.
16 people?
Quarter day.
128 people? 10 minutes. Does that work?
No. No.
Well, 4 people, 1 person 4 days, 2 people 2 days possibly. But going beyond that, it's getting a bit tricky, isn't it?
Yes.
Mathematically it's possible, but imagine 128 people trying to dig a hole this big. It would be like they'd be hitting each other on the head with shovels, wouldn't they?
Yes.
It's not going to work. What you'd do instead, if you really wanted that to happen, is you'd hire a digger. And then you could do that job more quickly, but it would cost more. Okay? So effort-driven scheduling, if you allocate more resources to a task, you can make that task happen more quickly, and that may shorten the duration of your project, which could be a good thing. And then fifthly, if you combine all that stuff we've talked out above, you've got a project plan, and it tells you more or less what's got to be done, who's got to do it, when it's going to happen, and everything's looking really good. And we've got costs and cash flows. And we also make the assumption of JIT for things like cement mixers, and also for the labour. What does JIT mean?
Just in time.
Just in time. And why is that relevant to project management?
Stock.
Yeah, you're building a house. One thing you could do, all the things you need for the house can arrive on day 1. Thump. There they are in the garden. Is that a good idea? And all the labourers and the roofers and everybody arrives on day 1 and sits there and waits until the roof's ready to be built. Is that a good idea?
No.
No. So what you do is with the raw materials, with the labour, with everything, and including the finance, you get it to arrive just when you need it. So you're using just in time for all those different things. That's a very common procedure to use in project management and elsewhere. It gives you more risks, but it's obviously more sensible to do that in terms of the cash flow and security and costs and so on. You'll also fine-tune your project and mess around with it and make changes to the scope, but if you're lucky, you will have a plan in place before the project starts. And your plan can be used for these things we mention on this slide here. I'm not going to talk through them all, but you can see they're a fairly sensible list of things that would be to your advantage in running a project or selling the idea of your project to people around. Now finally, you track the project. And what that means is see if it goes according to plan. And it won't probably go according to plan. And what you do when you track a project is you've got the idea of what you think's going to happen, that's your plan, and then you compare it to what actually happens when the work is done. And if there's a difference between what you thought would happen and what actually happened, it's called a variance. Is a variance a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a normal thing.
It's a normal thing. And is a positive variance better than negative variance?
Positive is supposed to be better in my labor.
Okay, we'll leave that one for now. Just think about it. And is a big variance better than a small variance? That's more obvious, I think. Small variance means a good plan. Big variance, we're in trouble. Okay, we'll come back to that later in the lecture, but that's the idea. And what you'll do then is if you find something's gone wrong early in your project, so somebody took longer to do something than they should, can you just go back, hit them around the face a few times, and say, now do it again, but this time do it in 4 days?
Yeah.
Why can't you do that?
Because
It delays the whole project, doesn't it? I mean, it's gone wrong, so the only thing you can change is things that haven't happened yet. So when you're tracking your project, work out what's actually happened. You can't change it, it's set in concrete, if you like, but you can change things that haven't happened yet. So if there's a critical task that used to take 10 days with one person, get 2 people to do it in 5 days, and you've saved some time. And then finally, you will close the project, and in doing that, you will learn what you did well, what you did badly, who were the good contractors, who were the bad contractors, who did you enjoy working with, who didn't you enjoy working with, who got on with who, how did things work. And what you can't do as a project manager is go and ask people who are the good contractors. Why can't you do that? Go and find another project manager and say, excuse me, who's a good contractor to do roofing?
why can't you do that?
Well, suppose you're a project manager and you know who the good ones are.
Oh, yeah, of course, you want to keep them for yourself.
Yeah, knowledge is power. And if you tell me who they are, oh good, I'm going to use them. And then when you want them, oh dear. So if I did ask you who were the good ones, you'd probably tell me who were the bad ones. Okay? So one of the things you learn each time you do a project is who are the good people. And keep that knowledge to yourself, obviously. Now, there's an example of a project underway. It's not a big project, but let me just outline what some of these things are. These little ticks here that you can see, where's the mouse gone? There it is. These little ticks up here mean those 3 things have happened now. They've actually been done. They've actually occurred. And the grey bars is where we thought they were going to be, and the blue bars is where they ended up being when it actually happened. So you see this one was supposed to take that length of time, but ended up taking that length of time. And that meant this one was supposed to start where that grey bar is, didn't start until then. And the one after didn't start until then. And this one, which is actually a critical task, has been delayed. So this project currently is running late. And actually it's also running over cost. So what would you do? Panic?
Not really. You will not panic. The project, the activities or tasks that are not done. Those are
Yeah, we've got some room to play around with some things over here, haven't we? Would you try and make the changes fairly quickly, or would you wait until the very end and then make the changes?
very quickly.
Yeah, the quicker the better. Make the changes to get it back on track as quickly as you can. And that's another sort of lesson to be learned about managing your projects when they actually begin. you can see the tasks. These are called tasks, and these things here with the black bars are called the phases. So there's a phase called preparation of strategic program pre-contact phase, and then there's these tasks it consists of. And then there's a phase called erection of scaffolding, and then there's these tasks it consists of. And this is an actual job done by a friend of mine who runs a firm of architects, and I might use it as the basis for your coursework, or I might use another one. It doesn't matter, but it's a useful example of a project. Now, most of the case studies we get you to work on in the seminars won't be as big as this. Your course study will be something like the size of this. This is about 80 or 90 tasks, but you need something reasonably realistic to do a coursework with, don't you? You can't just do little 8-task projects for the rest of your life. You're not going to get very far doing that. Right. Now, types of projects. I'm soon going to get you to do something. I don't just want to shout at you for an hour. I'm going to get you to think about something quite important in terms of project management soon. But just to start with, the types of projects that exist in the world. Well, first of all, there are giant things that have happened. The pyramids, the Great Wall of China, the M25, the motorway around London. They are giant strategic projects. But there are smaller things as well. Recruiting staff, changing the process, changing the way something's done, building a new factory, those sorts of things. But anything that's sort of large, that might take 2 to 5 years, you could call that a strategic project. And that needs top-level project managers, highly paid, dedicated. As an example, the Zambezi Dam, have you heard of that? It took 35 years to build. So if you're the project manager on that, that might be the only project you ever did in your working life. Finish that, retire. That was my job's done. Other projects, not that long. It varies enormously, but there's examples: a new product, a new location, a new plant, a motorway, anything you like, big bridge, that station over the road. The whole of that line is like lots of different projects, building that new line across London. But you can also have smaller scale projects, new quality system, contract out a service, do a sample survey, work out how you're going to do that in the marketing department. And those are projects, and they do achieve change, but would they actually be managed by project managers or by managers, do you think? More likely to be managers running those sorts of projects. So yes, these would be the professionally well-paid project managers, but these are more likely to be managers managing them as managers who happen to run projects. And again, that might be why this module is useful to you, because that might be where you end up working. And thirdly, you've got things like operational projects, overhauling machinery. Well, if you're overhauling a machine, do you actually get a project manager and a manager standing behind you working out what's going on? Or do they just tell you, get on with it, overhaul that machine? Yeah. So that's how that sort of works. A new supplier via tender. You don't need to do a great big project management process for that. It's still a project, but it's unlikely to have high-level project management supervision or even managerial supervision. Now, just out of interest, this is the first thing I'd like you to think about. Suppose your project is building a nuclear power station. Here we go. I want you to think, we talked about tasks and breaking a project down into tasks. How many tasks do you think that might consist of?
At least 10,000.
Okay, I've got at least 10,000. Now I've got another one here. Here's another nuclear power station, just so you can see how different they all are from each other. This one's in project, sorry, it's a bit tatty, a bit like my outfits. This one's in project management today. Just have a look at that little photograph there. And that's another nuclear power station. You can see it's completely different from that one up there. So you can't just say, oh, let's build another nuclear power station. They're all different from each other. But the same thing applies. How many tasks do you think might be in that? I had a guess of 10,000, was it?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, at least 10,000. Anybody else? Come on, let's have some guesses. You're going to be wrong.
About 1,000.
About 1,000?
10 million.
10 million?
1.
1 million. Okay, you want the answer?
Please.
Yeah.
1.5 million tasks. And you have to know what they all are, how they link together, what resources they need, how long will they take, should it be one person digging the hole in 4 days or 2 people doing it in 2 days, and so on. Yeah? And when will the stuff get stored, and what are the security issues, and how are we going to arrange the finance for that? Is that easy? Oh, it's not easy. Now you might want to go home. Now I might have told you enough to give up doing project management. And every project carefully planned by top quality project managers. However, they go wrong. The newspaper cuttings, I'm going to stop the recording before I start showing you the newspaper cuttings. Actually, I'm not going to show you them until I've asked you to do this. I'd like you to work in little groups and think about building a project which is an aircraft carrier. And it takes roughly 10 to 15 years to build an aircraft carrier. Okay? And I want you in little groups to think about what could possibly go wrong in that 10 years with your project. So I'd like you to talk to each other. If you haven't met the people you've sat near, say hello and start discussing what might go wrong with your lovely aircraft carrier. I'll just stop the lecture recording. Just carry on for a little while. We've not got much left to do. So there we go. Why is it the large IT projects or defence-based projects that go wrong? We know the answer to that now. But just to sort of talk about, there's a joke in project management, and that's the only joke really. Not much of it is funny, but this one is. Have a look at this. The old joke in project management. If you're lucky, you'll get 2 of those things in your project. A project which comes in on time, a project which comes in on cost, a project which meets specifications. And if you're lucky, you'll get 2 of those. And that's a successful project. Now, that's quite interesting. It's not very funny. I can't see many people laughing. But it has a bearing on your project. And this is called the iron triangle of project management. Time, cost, and specifications. Time, cost, specifications. The iron triangle. It's just the name it's called in the literature. And it has a relevance because suppose your project is the London Olympic Games. Now have a think about that. Time, cost, or specifications. Which is the most important thing for the London Olympics? Or the Rio Olympics? Time. I agree. Which is the second most important? Specifications. I agree. We can't just say, okay, we were going to build a 100-metre track, but now it's going to be 80 metres because we're running out of money. The swimming pool was going to be 5 foot deep, but now it's 2 foot 6 deep, and the divers are going to bang their heads on the bottom. You can't change the specifications. You can't change the time. So if anything goes wrong with that project, what's it likely to be?
Cost.
And if you look at the papers, what went wrong? The costs. All the time we were reading about the costs of the Olympics going up. And the reason for that is they couldn't give way on the other 2. So it's logical that the costs would be the problem. Let's take another example. A new supermarket. A new supermarket. What's most important? Time, cost, specifications. Yeah, it's got to look like a Sainsbury's, hasn't it? It's got to fit the corporate brand. Okay, what's the second most important?
Cost.
I agree, cost. This is a commercial activity. They want to get the cost right. So if anything goes wrong, yeah. And let's talk about your battleship. Suppose your project is your battleship, your aircraft carrier. What's the most important thing? Probably. And the second most important thing?
Cost.
So if anything goes wrong, and I can find you half a dozen or so articles in here about mothballed projects from defence or defence projects that are running late. You know what mothballed means?
No.
Left in the cupboard, not done. Just abandoned halfway through because money's run out. Okay, so that's the joke in project management. You can get any 2 of those 3 things. Ha ha ha. You're going to enjoy this module, aren't you? If it's like that every week, wow. Software, not going to talk about that. There's different software you can use. What I do want to finish the lecture with is just mentioning this little thing here, which is where you can go if you want to download this software for free. If I just take that click now, and you can do this later, obviously, yourselves, but as I said, don't do it now because it will run out before the coursework's due in. It takes you to the Microsoft page, and can you spot where you need to go to download the software for free?
By now?
Well done. Excellent. So that's there for you when you're ready. But don't do it yet. But Microsoft Project is on every computer in the university and all the libraries, so you don't need a copy at home. Or you can get somebody at work to get it for you, or you can find it in a little brown envelope from somewhere. But if you do that, I don't want to know about it. But it costs about £400, or as you can see there, about $30 a month if you want the online version. But you can get a free version. I've tried to and get it for you free as students through Microsoft, but they're not having any of it. They're not interested. They know they can get money for Project. They want to carry on getting money for Project. So, okay. That's it. That's pretty much the end of your first lecture. Thank you for choosing the module, and I hope you enjoy it.
So what we need is the Microsoft